They pushed him, mocked him, called him weak. But what they didn't know, his father ran the most feared crew on the south side. Eighton Briggs stepped off the school bus with his hoodie up, headphones covering both ears, and a worn black notebook tucked under his arm. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Lincoln Middle School in Tulsa wasn't known for being welcoming to quiet kids, and Eighton had learned from a young age that silence was its own kind of shield. He kept his pace steady, walked past the chattering clusters of students in the courtyard, and headed toward the front entrance. First day. New school, different city, same nerves. But he kept his eyes low and his stride calm. Inside, the school smelled like pencil shavings and reheated cafeteria food. The walls were a mix of beige and old blue, the kind that made every middle school feel like a hospital that never got renovated. Kids moved in packs, laughing, yelling, bumping shoulders. Eighton didn't try to fit into any group. He'd already figured out that trying was usually what got you noticed in the worst way. "Hey, you lost or something?" a boy asked as Eighton stopped at the wrong classroom door. His voice had that tone, half joke, half challenge. Eighton barely looked up. "Nah, room 212. The kid just smirked and walked away with a shrug. A small moment, nothing serious. But Eighton could already feel the eyes. The glances that lasted a second too long. The whispers right after he passed. His style was clean. Black cargo pants, Air Force Ones, a slate-grey hoodie that hung just right. Not flashy, but not invisible either, and that was enough. By lunch, he found a quiet corner at the edge of the cafeteria, behind the vending machines. Pulled out his notebook. Started sketching. The page filled up quickly. Shapes, faces, shadows. Art was how he made sense of things. It didn't talk back. Didn't ask questions. Didn't judge him by how he talked or where he came from. A group of boys sat 2 tables down, watching him now and then. One of them pointed. Another chuckled. Eighton didn't lift his head. "He's got that weirdo look." One whispered. "Bet he don't even talk. I bet he's drawing anime or some creepy stuff." They didn't bother coming over. Not yet. But the vibe was there. Eighton knew how these things started. Not always loud, but steady. A comment here, a bump there. Just enough to let you know you didn't belong. After school, he waited by the bike rack, even though he didn't have a bike. It was just quieter than the front entrance. He leaned against the rail, headphones still on, volume low so he could listen without looking like he was listening. A girl walked by, maybe 7th grade, and smiled awkwardly. "Hi." Eighton gave a small nod. "Hey." It was probably the only normal interaction he'd had all day. That night at home, he sat on the back porch, knees pulled up, notebook open. His mom, Reva, watched him from the kitchen window, wiping her hands on a towel. "You okay out there?" she called. Eighton shrugged. "Yeah." She came out and sat beside him, pulling her sweater tight. "You don't have to pretend, baby. First days are rough." He drew a loose circle, then shaded it in. "It's fine. Just got to get through the week." She didn't push, just sat there, quiet for a while. Then, gently, "You know your dad said to let him know if anything felt off." Eighton's jaw tensed a little. "I don't want him to know. I don't want to be that kid." Reva sighed. "You're not that kid. You're our kid, and your dad. I know what he does." Eighton said quickly. "That's why I want to do this on my own." Reva looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but you let me know. Don't let silence be your armor forever, Eighton." He didn't answer, just kept drawing. A set of eyes, sharp, focused, watching. But the thing about silence is, it only works when people let you keep it. By the end of Eighton's first week at Lincoln, things had already shifted. He wasn't just the quiet kid anymore, he was the target. It started with Tyrus Belden. Tall, wiry, always chewing gum like he was trying to show off his jawline. The kind of kid who carried around a football even though he didn't make the team. On Wednesday, during 3rd period, Tyrus walked by Eighton's desk and knocked his pencil case to the floor. "Oh, my bad," he said, smirking as pencils rolled across the tile. Eitan didn't say anything, just picked them up one by one, calm. A few kids laughed. One of them, Quinn Rain, muttered, "He probably draws himself crying at night." Eitan still didn't react. He was used to testing, kids prodding to see what would make you snap. What they didn't understand was that staying silent took more strength than clapping back ever could. By Friday, things escalated. Eitan was at his locker when a crumpled piece of paper landed at his feet. He unfolded it. A rough sketch of a monkey with his hoodie and headphones, exaggerated lips and all. It was sloppy, mean, and anonymous. But Eitan didn't need a name. The handwriting on the back said enough. Quinn. He looked around. Quinn and Tyrus were halfway down the hall, pretending not to watch, nudging each other like middle school kings of cruelty. Eitan felt his stomach twist, but he just folded the paper again and slid it into his notebook. A record, like the others. "Why don't you ever say nothing?" a voice said from behind him. He turned to see Soren Levette, a stocky kid with crooked glasses and a backpack that looked twice his size. Soren wasn't exactly popular, but he wasn't invisible either. He was one of those middle-ground kids who floated just enough to be tolerated. "I just don't," Eitan replied. Soren looked over at Tyrus. "You're smarter than me if you can keep your mouth shut around those guys." "I don't care what they think," Eitan said, closing his locker. "I care when they start touching my stuff." That afternoon, in gym class, Tyrus waited until Coach walked out to grab more cones, then accidentally shoulder-checked Eitan into the bleachers. The gym echoed with laughter as Eitan got back on his feet. "You see that? Man flew like a leaf!" Quinn howled. Eitan stood up, eyes locked on the wall instead of the boys. Coach came back and glanced around, clueless. No one said a word, not even Soren, who looked down at his shoes. In the locker room afterward, Eitan found his sketchbook soaked. Someone had poured water over it. Pages warped, ink smeared. It felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He grabbed his hoodie from the bench, wringing out the sleeves as water dripped onto the floor. He didn't even try to find out who did it. That night, at the dinner table, Reva noticed the silence. "You're not eating," she said. "Not hungry." She looked at the soggy notebook on the counter. "What happened?" Eitan hesitated, then shrugged. "It rained." Reva's eyes narrowed. "Eitan, I'm handling it, Mom. Please." She didn't press, but she picked up her phone the moment he left the room. Texted one person, just in case. Eitan sat in his bedroom, redrawing what he could. Some pages were ruined beyond saving, others he tried to trace. He didn't cry. He'd done that too many times in younger grades. Now he just let the anger sit, low in his chest, like a pot left simmering. His phone buzzed with a notification. Instagram. Someone had posted a photo of him bent over in gym, captioned, "Man down! Someone get the Sketch Fairy a helmet!" He closed the app. For the first time, he considered telling his dad. Not because he wanted revenge, but because he was getting tired. But tired isn't always enough to make someone talk. Sometimes it takes humiliation. And that was coming faster than he expected. Monday started the way every Monday does. Slow, quiet, and a little heavier than it should be. Eitan walked through the front doors of Lincoln Middle, with his hoodie pulled tighter than usual. His eyes scanned the halls without moving his head. He wasn't looking for trouble, just making sure it didn't find him first. By now, the bullying wasn't a secret. A few teachers noticed the jokes. One or two kids stopped laughing, but that was about it. Most just watched, like they were waiting to see how far it would go. At lunch, Eitan sat alone again. Same spot behind the vending machines. His notebook, now slightly warped, sat on his lap. He didn't bother sketching. Not today. His head was too loud. Then he heard it. "Yo! Eitan! You forgot your leash, man!" Quinn. Eitan didn't look up, but he could hear the sneakers approaching. Tyrus was with him. And behind them, someone new. A kid named Jace. Quiet in class, but always hanging near trouble when it looked fun. Quinn walked around the vending machines and dropped something on Aiton's tray. A dog collar. Aiton stared at it. Didn't move. You gonna bark? Or just keep drawing in your sad little book? Quinn said. Aiton stayed still. Tyrus leaned over and snatched the tray. You don't need this anyway. He dumped the food onto the ground. Beans, rice, a crushed carton of chocolate milk. The smell hit immediately. Aiton stood up, slow and quiet. Jace held up his phone, already recording. You gonna hit him? Jace asked. Come on, man, hit him, go viral. Aiton stepped forward, not toward Quinn, not toward Tyrus, but toward Jace. Calm, collected. Turn that off, he said, voice low. Jace didn't. He stepped back, grinning. Say hi to TikTok. Then Quinn shoved Aiton from behind. He stumbled forward, catching himself on the corner of the vending machine. Pain shot through his arm, but he didn't yell. He didn't give them that. Jace kept filming. Tyrus laughed. Quinn posed like he just won something. A crowd had started to form. Yo, you good? Someone yelled. A teacher came rushing over, seconds too late. The boys scattered, except for Aiton, who stood there holding his arm. Silent. The teacher, Mr. Langley, knelt beside him. Aiton, are you hurt? Aiton didn't answer. He just looked at the spilled food, then at the collar still lying on the floor. That evening he came home later than usual. Reva was in the kitchen. She turned the moment she heard the door. Aiton. What happened? He didn't speak. Walked past her. Straight to the bathroom. Locked the door. She knocked gently. Sweetheart, talk to me. Still nothing. When he finally came out, she saw the scraped elbow, the red mark on his neck. She didn't ask again. She just took his phone off the table and went to her room. Aiton laid down on his bed, headphones over his ears, but no music playing. The silence pressed in. Half an hour later, Reva stood in the living room, phone in hand. She'd watched the video. Someone had sent it to her anonymously. The whole cafeteria scene. Unedited, raw, humiliating. Her fingers hovered over the contacts list. Then she tapped one name, Knox Briggs. He picked up on the first ring. Hey, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. You busy? There was a pause. What's wrong? She didn't answer right away. Just sent the video. Knox didn't say anything for a full minute. Then, I'll be by tomorrow. The next morning, Aiton left for school like nothing happened. But Reva knew. And now, Knox knew too. Aiton had tried to keep the two parts of his life separate, but the line was gone. And once someone like Knox Briggs gets involved, things don't stay quiet for long. The next day, Lincoln Middle School felt different before the bell even rang. Not louder, not quieter, just still, like something in the air had paused. At exactly 9:10 a.m. Knox Briggs stepped through the front doors. No music, no crew, no need for any of that. He wore a plain black coat over a charcoal button-up, dark jeans, and boots polished just enough to show he took himself seriously. Not flashy, just sharp. Clean lines, cold eyes. The front desk secretary looked up and blinked like she forgot how to breathe. Can I help you, sir? She asked. Knox smiled, but only with his mouth. Principal Stein. I have an appointment. He didn't. But 5 minutes later, he was sitting across from Principal Erin Stein, a woman who had spent years running that school with a clipboard and firm tone. Today, she didn't have either. Just a pale face and a tight jaw. I'm here about my son, Knox said. Aiton Briggs. Principal Stein glanced down at a folder. Yes, I received an email this morning. I only just saw the video. I don't need a full explanation, Knox interrupted. I've seen it. She folded her hands. We're handling it. We're meeting with the students involved. Their parents will be called in. I'm not here to ask for anything, Knox said calmly. I'm here to look people in the eye. That's it. There was something in his voice that shut down every reflex she had. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even angry in the way people expected angry to look. He was just clear. Principal Stein cleared her throat. Aiton hasn't reported any issues before now. Because he didn't want to bring me into it. He thought he could handle it on his own. Knox leaned forward. That changes today. Outside the office, word traveled faster than text messages. Some of the staff knew who Knox was, a name whispered years ago in side conversations, especially by teachers who lived on the south side. Stories, allegiances, power that didn't come from title or paycheck, but from history. Mr. Langley, the gym teacher, whispered to Ms. Dennison, "You know who that is?" She nodded once. "I heard about his brother, back in O." By the time Knox left the principal's office and stepped into the hallway, the buzz had turned into silence. Students turned their heads as he walked past. Some instinctively stepped aside, like they didn't know why they were moving, just that they should. He didn't search for Eitan. That wasn't the point. But at the end of the corridor, he passed Tyrus. The boy was joking with Quinn near the water fountain until his eyes met Knox's. Knox didn't say a word, didn't change expression. Tyrus's grin faded. Knox kept walking. He stopped briefly near the office assistant's desk. "I'll be back at 3:15 to pick my son up." The woman nodded. "Yes, sir." Let him know. At 3:12, Knox was already parked outside in a black Charger with the engine off and arms folded across his chest. Eitan walked out with his headphones on, but spotted the car right away. His heart thudded once in his chest. He opened the passenger door. "You didn't have to come." Knox didn't answer right away. He looked straight ahead. "You know who you are, Eitan?" Eitan hesitated. "I guess?" "No. You don't guess. You know." Knox turned his head slowly. "You carry my name. That means something. I don't use it for petty threats. But I also don't let people think it's meaningless." Eitan looked down. "I didn't want you to fix it for me. I didn't fix anything," Knox said. "I showed up. That's all I needed to do." They drove in silence for a few minutes before Knox spoke again. "Tomorrow, you walk in there the same way you did yesterday. Don't change a thing. Don't act harder. Don't act smaller. Just be you. I'll handle the rest." Eitan nodded, quietly. Almost like a breath of relief had left his chest. But Knox's visit wasn't just for Eitan. It was for everyone watching. And some people were paying closer attention than others. Wednesday morning rolled in like nothing had happened, at least on the surface. The same school bells, the same cafeteria smell, the same cracked ceiling tile above room 209, but the hallways felt different. Kids still laughed. Teachers still barked reminders. But Eitan could feel the difference in the space around him. He walked through the corridor with his headphones on, hoodie half-zipped, and notebook tucked under his arm like always. But today, no one tripped him. No one whispered anything clever. Even Tyrus kept his eyes glued to his locker, suddenly fascinated with its combination. Quinn looked up from his phone as Eitan passed by, then looked right back down. Nobody said a word. During third period, Ms. Dennison called on Eitan for the first time all week. "Eitan, any thoughts on the symbolism in the last paragraph?" He didn't expect it, but he didn't flinch. He looked up, clear voice steady. The writer's trying to show that pretending not to feel something is still feeling it. He's not numb. He's hiding. Ms. Dennison nodded. "Well said." A few students turned in their seats, not mocking, just noticing. At lunch, Eitan sat in his usual corner, but this time, someone approached. Soren. He stood there for a second, tray in hand, then said, "Is this seat taken?" Eitan looked up. "It's a bench." Soren chuckled nervously and sat. "Fair." They ate in silence for a while before Soren spoke again. "People been acting different." Eitan shrugged. "Noticed. I saw your dad yesterday." Eitan didn't say anything. Soren leaned in a little. "My cousin knows him. Said back in the day, nobody crossed him unless they had a death wish." Eitan gave him a side glance. "That was back in the day. Still. People remember." Soren paused, chewing his sandwich. "That's why Quinn's all quiet now. His mum made him delete the video. Said she doesn't want no problems." Eitan looked down at his tray. "I don't want people scared of me." "They're not scared of you," Soren said. "They're scared of what they did." That landed harder than Eitan expected. Later that afternoon, during study hall, Tyrus sat 2 rows over. He kept glancing at Eitan, tapping his pencil like he was trying to work up the nerve to say something. Finally, he stood and walked over. Hey. Aiton looked up. Yeah? Tyrus hesitated, then spoke in a quieter voice than usual. That whole thing in the cafeteria. It was dumb. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Aiton blinked slowly. You shoved me into a vending machine. I know, Tyrus said quickly. I was just messing around. Aiton stared at him. You ever get shoved into something just for breathing? Tyrus's mouth opened, then closed. Aiton went back to his notebook. Tyrus stood there a moment longer, then walked away. That night, Aiton sat on the back porch again, notebook in hand. Reva brought him a mug of hot cocoa and sat beside him without saying anything. Things were different today, he said after a while. Reva smiled, a tired but proud kind of smile. Good different? I think so. She sipped from her own mug. Your dad called me. Asked how you were. Aiton didn't look up. You tell him I'm fine. I told him you handled it better than most grown men would have. He smiled faintly. I didn't even do anything. Exactly. They sat quietly, the air cooling, the sky turning a shade of purple that made everything feel softer. Aiton flipped his notebook open to a blank page. For the first time in days, his hand started moving again. Sketching, not from anger, not from pain, but just because he wanted to. But there was still one more thing he needed to understand. Something only his father could tell him. That Saturday morning, Aiton sat at the kitchen table, toast untouched on his plate, notebook open but blank. His thoughts were heavy, not angry, just full. Knox Briggs walked in from the garage, sleeves rolled, grease on his forearm from tuning the truck. He didn't say good morning. He rarely did. Just poured his coffee, sat down across from his son, and let the silence settle between them. Aiton finally spoke. You used to be different, right? Knox didn't flinch. Still am. I mean, people talk like you were some kind of legend. Even Soren said his cousin was scared of you. Knox sipped his coffee. Fear's easy to earn. Respect's harder. One fades, one stays. Aiton nodded slowly. I didn't want people to respect me just because of your name. You think that's what happened? Knox asked. Aiton shrugged. Maybe. Knox leaned forward, locking eyes with his son. Listen close. My name might have stopped some noise, but it didn't change you. You didn't run. You didn't throw hands. You didn't beg anyone to fix it. You stood up straight, kept your mouth shut, and let the world show its cards. But I didn't fight back. Aiton muttered. I just took it. No, Knox said. You took it until it became theirs to answer for. You made them show who they are. That's strength. Aiton looked down at his notebook. You ever feel like you're carrying two versions of yourself? Knox chuckled once, low and real. Every damn day. Aiton smirked. I used to think I had to be the loudest in the room, Knox said, leaning back. Then I learned the loudest man's usually the weakest. A quiet man with a line you don't cross? That's the one people remember. Aiton nodded, slower this time. Knox stood up, drained his coffee, and grabbed his keys. Come on, let's get some air. They drove to a lot near the old bridge on the south side, an empty spot where Knox used to box when he was younger. It wasn't a big place, just cracked pavement and bent fencing. But to him, it was sacred. Knox turned off the engine. This is where I figured out who I wasn't gonna be. My older brother, he wanted power, control. I just wanted space. You know what I learned standing out here? Aiton looked at him. People are either echoes or originals. You keep echoing what they throw at you, you'll disappear. But if you stand your ground, make your own sound, even if it's quiet, it stays. They sat there in silence for a while. The wind picked up a little. Aiton opened his notebook and started drawing again. He didn't know what the picture was yet, but his hand moved like it remembered something his mind hadn't caught up with. When they got home, Reva was watering the plants out back. Aiton walked past her, paused, then hugged her from behind. She froze, surprised, then smiled. You good? She asked softly. Getting there, he said. That night, Aiton didn't wear his headphones to bed. Instead, he lay there, eyes open, thinking about the cafeteria, the vending machine, the apology, the look in his dad's eyes. He realized something then. Knox didn't come to scare anyone. He came to be seen, to remind people that silence doesn't mean weakness, and presence doesn't need noise. The next Monday, Eitan sat in class beside Soren. They didn't say much. They didn't have to. During lunch, he sat at his usual bench. Some kids walked by and glanced his way, but didn't laugh, didn't whisper, just moved on. And when Tyrus walked past, he gave a small nod. Not fear, not friendship, just acknowledgement. Eitan turned back to his sketchbook and smiled. He was still quiet, still walked alone sometimes, still drew faces nobody else could see. But now, people saw him, and that was enough. Sometimes the loudest change happens in silence. And when you find the strength to carry your name with dignity, not noise, you're already miles ahead. If this story moved you, or reminded you of someone you know, hit subscribe. There's more to say, more stories to tell. And every voice matters, even the quiet ones.